a beautiful weather, a blowing of wind, and sitting with nature with deep thoughts in it. That's what is literature all about. Deep thought and deep understanding. So, hello and welcome to all my students. And today we have come up with some important writer, that is Jonathan Swift. When we talk about Jonathan Swift, how can we forget Gulliver Travels? We have done in our like small classes Gulliver Travels, but yes, it is also important from the point of net examination that you would have forgotten and you don't remember the key points that were there in Gulliver Travels and other major works of Jonathan Swift. So today we will take up his major works and we'll get to know about Jonathan Swift's life. So without wasting time, let's start, but don't forget to subscribe it. Now Jonathan Swift was born in Dublin and he was educated at Trinity College. So when he started his life, he was born out of English parents and was born in Dublin, and later he got his education at Trinity College, and in 1689 he accepted an offer, and that offer was given by Dorothy Osborne of a position in Temple's household at Moor Park, Surrey. But later he being dissatisfied and he wanted more for his advancement, so he started visiting London frequently, and then he became friends with Edison, Steele, Congreve and other poets, and there starts his career. And the very first work that he wrote was The Battle of Books. So there he started. How he started, I told you, right? So for his advancement, he wanted to write something, he wanted to do something, and being friends with Edison and Congreve, his poet came out, or you can say a prose writer came out, because he was the greatest satirist of his age. And in his works he makes use of humor and irony, and the contribution that he has given to the development of English prose style gives him a unique position than any other writer, and so he is counted as one of the great prose writers of his time. But before we talk about his major prose work, one should know that the methods that he used in his work, and he makes such uses, like he know where to use similes and where to use metaphors, which gives life to his work, to the dialects that he write. And he strikes boldly, and his works are full of sarcasm and irony. So, particularly, his works are very impressive, and he is called the great satirist of his age because of his humorous and ironical way that he writes and the sarcasm that he uses in his writing. Now, he have a rhythm of both thought and languages, and so he is a great prose writer. Thought process and the language that he writes gives him the pen to write a great writings like The Battle of Books, Gulliver Travels, A Tale of Tub, the journals to Stella, and the Drapier's Letter. Now we will discuss these works in detail. So the very first work that we should know about, The Battle of Books. In this book, he represents the controversy of the ancients and the modern, and he's being inclined towards the ancients, and he stands in support of his patron William Temple, who was his financier and who helped him in many other ways. So he was particularly in support of William Temple. In this book, he represents ancients as B. Now, he being inclined towards ancients and in support of ancients, uh, in this satirical work, he bluntly lashes these modern writers, you can say, and he represents ancients as a beast. Why bee? Because it flies from flower to flower and gets all its sweetness and offer it to all. Right? Whereas by their writing, obviously by their writing, whereas moderns are represented by spider, who spins everything out of his own sides. So here moderns are being satirized with a bitter irony. Right? So please don't forget that the work Battle of the Book, here he compares ancients as bees and moderns as spider. Correct? Now, this was his major work, or you can say the very first work that he wrote. Now, moving on to the next work of Jonathan Swift, A Tale of a Tub, which was written in 1704. The Battle of the Book was also published in 1704, and the Battle of the Books was this issue was undecided, and so it was left like that. Please remember, don't forget it, that this issue continued and this was left undecided. Now coming to the Tale of Tub, which was also published in 1704, makes us acquainted with the history of church, and Swift criticizes the corruption of church. It's a religious allegory. Now, here Swift tries to criticize the corruption of church that was taking place in the minds of the people. It is a religious allegory and it tells us the history of church. Now, here the title itself suggests that it refers to the large tub that sailors would throw overboard to divert us. Now, this particular title suggests that while the sailor sails the ship, and when a whale comes at the back, then in order to divert its mind, they throw a tub so that it gets diverted, right? So that it doesn't come to their boat whale. But here the whale is being compared to, the whale is Thomas Hobbes, that is his work Leviathan, which was published in 1651, a political monster born of Descartes' mathematical philosophy. Now here the whale is Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan, because he says that the ship कौन सी है, the ship that he's talking about, it is an institutional Christianity that might sunk. It is about why Swift has represented here the whale as Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan, because those people who question the government and its right to rule, and in all these things Hobbes was highly controversial, and his critique may provoke a more rational response. So here, A Tale of Tub, this title particularly suggests about this whole story. So please don't forget that the whale here is compared to as Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan, whereas जो ship है, that is the institutional Christianity that might be sunk, that might be lost in that big sea, in that corruption, right? So these two works are really very important from the point of view in your net examination or any other examination, as they can ask any type of question. If you know these things, you can please jot down these points. When I'm telling these points, please jot down somewhere, write somewhere in your copy, so that you can revise it during your examination. Okay, now Swift writes next work, A Journal to Stella. This was written by Swift, and these were 65 letters, and these letters were written to Astor Johnson. And here this Astor Johnson is represented as Stella in his A Journal to Stella. Okay, now what all things he tells is, it shows the love passages, and his tone is very delicate, and he also describes it personally. And for women who loved him and is like a ray of light in his life, whom he got secretly married. It is said that he's talking about the woman whom he got secretly married later, right? His other works, when we see, is the Drapier's Letter and A Modest Proposal. Now, when we talk about the Drapier's Letter, it was a collection, or you can say a series of 7 pamphlets, and it was written between 1724 and 1725. And here Jonathan Swift aroused public in Dublin. Sorry. Jonathan Swift aroused public opinion in Ireland. Why? Because he was against the inferior quality imposed on that copper coins that was taken by the Queen. So he was against those, and so he wanted everyone to be part and give their opinion on this. So there were 7 pamphlets that were written. So the Drapier Letter is based on that. When we come to A Modest Proposal, here, for preventing the children of poor people from being a burden to their parents. Now, this particular A Modest Proposal, you will see that it is a masterpiece of irony. And here Swift tell those poor parents a solution of poverty through his modest proposal. He says, and he suggests, that these poor Irish families should fatten up their children by giving them proper meal and by giving them meat, and sell them to rich English landowners. By selling them, they will get money and they will have something to eat, and their poverty may be as they are poor, so they will be helped by that money. So this is what he suggests, right? Now, the main work, the very work that you can say that we'll talk about here about Gulliver Travels. So the first work that I told you was The Battle of the Books by Jonathan Swift, then A Tale of Tub, then A Journal to Stella, then The Drapier's Letter and A Modest Proposal. We need not go in detail for Drapier's Letter and A Modest Proposal, but yes, basic things I have already told you. Now, one thing that is left and that I should tell you all, because that is important and one should know about it. When we were talking about A Tale of Tub, it also tells about a story of a parent, or you can say a father, that leaves his clothes and you can say as a will for his 3 sons, with the direction that these suits should never be altered. There are 3 sons, Peter, Jack and Martin. Peter stands for Roman Catholic Church, Jack represents the dissenters, and Martin the personification of the Anglican and Lutheran churches. Now, what does the coat represent over here? It represents the outward forms of religion. Now, in this first, it is told that these brothers live together at first and they travel to other countries, they destroy giants and monsters, and this represents the irreligious person. That is the heathen religion, that they were irreligion. But when they come back to their town, they found that their coats are out of date. So they get it embedded like a new fashion, they get it altered the way they want it. And while making changes, they did it in irreligious way. They There came pride, wealth, and ambition. That was not before. And that was the condition of his father too. That they should not be altered. They should be as they are. But as these they thought it was old fashioned, so they get it embedded, and there came pride, wealth, and ambition. So what does this work shows? It shows the irreligious person, right? The last time that I told you that the institutional Christianity, it's going to sink in that sea, right? It will not be shown. So that in order to make it known to other people, Swift has written this. Right? So please remember this, A Tale of Tub. I never wanted to miss this. So I have told you in the end that A Tale of Tub, in this, father's will, suits of cloth, three sons. Peter stands for Roman Catholic Church, Jack represents dissenters, and Martin the personification of the Anglican and Lutheran churches. Now, what does the coat represent? That is outward forms of religion. So it is. So we are done with all these 5 works. Now the main work, that is Gulliver. When we talk about Gulliver Travels, it is one of the most famous works of Swift, and it shows the experiences of a seaman where he imagines, and these experiences are full of adventures and wanderings in unknown regions. Gulliver travels to other places which was adventurous to him, and he traveled to unknown regions. Now this particular book is divided into 4 parts, right? It represents the adventures of Gulliver in 4 lands. Now what you all have to remember in this work is Gulliver travels, but in this particular book you have to remember the points that first voyage Gulliver का कहाँ था, then second voyage कहाँ पे था, then third and last. The places you have to remember, that is very important, and what he has done over there is important. So I have given you in very short points, and these are the important notes that one should remember, because this is very important and they can ask, and it is being asked in last examinations if you see, right? So very coolly, let's hear. First book, Gulliver ship he was in between storm, and as he was in storm, his ship gets wrecked and he finds himself at Lilliput. As his ship gets destroyed in storm, he sails at Lilliput, right? Then there he found the inhabitants. Those were 6 inches tall. They were so short that he was like only his emperor was a bit tall. Others were 6 inches tall. Now in this particular voyage, or you can say in this first book, he tells how these people showed great concern, and in return he helped them to end war with Blefuscu. Now this was an island across the bay from them. It is Blefuscu, right? This island was across the bay. But there, where he was living with the Lilliputs, their emperor wanted Blefuscudians to slave them, but Herr Gulliver refused it, that he is not going to do so. So he goes there in that island, where he goes to Blefuscu, and he converts there he finds a warship, and he converts that warship for his own use so that he can go back to England, his home place. Okay, so he gets that ship and he goes back to England. This was the first book. The first thing that you have to remember, that his first voyage was to Lilliput. There the inhabitants were 6 inches tall. He helped them in to end war with Blefuscu. Please remember it. Now comes the second book. In the second book, he was sent in search of water. And when he went in search of water, he encounters a land of giants. He was with his crew member and he was searching for water. There he gets an island where he is captured by giants. His crew members run away, but Gulliver was captured by giants. Okay, the farmer takes him to his home, and first place he was to Lilliput. They were so small, and in the second place they were so big that Gulliver seems to be like a Lilliput people. So their people were very they were giants. So a farmer took him his home, and there he is being cared, and then other day he takes him to countryside and sells Gulliver to Queen, where in the court it is seen that Gulliver defends England, his home place. He is seen being defending England, and he also tells in the court about the invention of gunpowder and the weapons used during warfare. Now, which was this island I have yet not mentioned? That is Brobdingnag. Brobdingnag. Please remember, first place was Lilliput, second place was Brobdingnag. Right? So this was his second experience. Now coming to the third place, that is third voyage of Gulliver. Gulliver was assigned a work so that he can visit nearby places, and in order to establish trade. So when he was visiting these islands, on his trip, pirates attacked him, and Gulliver could not save himself, and he ran to an island, that is Laputa. Laputa, this was a flying island. It was flying, and why it was flying? Because the people were associated with the things like mathematics and music, and their astronomers, with the help of law of magnetism, was able to move the island. Okay, very simple one. Third voyage was to Laputa. Now this was a great experience for him because this was a flying island, and there he has seen altogether different people. The first people were Lilliput. There he had other experience. Second one, he had different experience there at Brobdingnag. Why? Because there were people like giants. In the third voyage, he was attacked by pirates, so he reaches to Laputa, and there he sees a flying island. Now comes the last voyage. Now it is the last voyage was to the land of Huinam, Huinam, who are in the shape of horse, and they were endowed with reason, where we can see their society being simple and clean and not like yahoos. Now who they were? Listen to this story carefully. Gulliver was a captain of a merchant ship, and during his voyage he was bound for he was said that he has to go to islands like Barbados and Leeward Island, but some of his crew members get ill and they die. So Gulliver replaced them by others in Barbados, and these crew members were later known that Gulliver gets to know that these were pirates, and with the mutiny of other men at ship, Gulliver was troubled because of this, and he finds himself in the island surrounded by ugly and human-like creature called as yahoos, and these yahoos attack at him, and he was saved by Hu Imnam, who looks like a horse, right? And he started living there. He felt very nice, and because that society was so simple and clean, and their people were also good, so they were horse like, but yes, they were nice to Gulliver, and he lived there for 7 years. But later he had to come back to his home place, England, because their assembly, the kingdom assembly, they said that Gulliver is from a group of Yahoo, and they wanted to return him to his word. So he had to come back. He was quite disappointed, and he felt bad because he wanted to live over there with them, but he had to return back to England, his home place, and there later we get to know that he buys two horses and spend more of the time with them. So it was all about Gulliver travel. Gulliver travel itself suggests that Gulliver, having the experience of traveling in the four altogether new places and unknown places with a great experience. So this is important. Please don't miss it, because they ask you several questions. So I have given you all important points possible of all his work. So we are done with Jonathan Swift, right? But how can we forget with the note that I give you in the end? That is, let's see. Jonathan Swift was known as the great figures of the age of Poe. He was a known figure, a great literary figures of the age of Poe, and Edison called him, in the words of Edison itself, it is the greatest genius of the nation. And F.R. Lewis also says Swift is a great writer. Why I have given you these quotes? Why? Because they can be asked that what Edison, they will ask you the greatest genius of the nation is called by whom? स्विफ्ट के लिए किसने कहा था? तो we should know that it was said by Joseph Edison. And Swift is a great writer who said F.R. Lewis. This is important, so please don't forget it. Now, the last point, Swift has written lines on the death of Dr. Swift. अभी तक तो हमने उनकी प्रोज राइटिंग के बारे में पढ़ा. उनकी पोएट्री, there was lines on the death of Dr. Swift, and it was written by Jonathan Swift himself, and it was based on his supposed death. That you will read, it shows a pleasing, it's very pleasing to read this. He has to what he has written on his supposed death. So here we end with this particular topic, Jonathan Swift. Please don't forget, this is very important. Thank you and see you in my next class. Keep watching.